everyone, my name is Kevin. Welcome to my Accessing APIs using HTTP Client in .NET course. I'm a Microsoft MVP and freelance solution architect, currently focused on security and building APIs. Integrating with a web API is a common task required for many applications. In this course, you will learn how to do that from your .NET application. First, you will explore HTTP client internals and basic create, read, update, delete interaction. Next, you'll discover how to work with streams, consume a streaming API endpoint, work with compression and learn how to cancel requests that are no longer needed. Finally, you will learn how to improve the reliability of your requests and how to extend the HTTP client with custom handlers. By the end of this course, you will have the skills and knowledge of using HTTP client needed to integrate your .NET application with a web API. Before beginning the course, you should be familiar with C# and have some understanding of building applications with .NET. I hope you'll join me on this journey to learn all about integrating with a web API with the Accessing APIs using HTTP client in .NET course at Pluralsight. Hi there and welcome to the Accessing APIs with HTTP client in .NET course here at Pluralsight. I'm Kevin and I'll guide you through it. Let's start with a quick version check. This course was created with the displayed versions of ASP.NET Core, .NET and Visual Studio. The course is 100% applicable to the displayed versions of aforementioned frameworks and tools. I can't speak about future versions yet, but chances are pretty good that what you will learn here will still apply. That being said, I try to keep my courses up to date and or create new versions of my courses whenever the new major long-term supported version is released. The first thing to look for is the course info on the right-hand side of the course page. Like that, you can see when the course was last updated. That means that clips were changed. For some courses, there might be a reviewed date included. That means that no clips were changed, but I did review the course to check whether the content was still valid. The second thing to look for is my author page. There, all my courses are listed, so you can check whether one exists that targets the exact version you're targeting. Especially useful is the follow button. If you want to be notified of new courses, simply click that and you'll get an email whenever the new course or course update is released. Let's have a look at what's coming up. We're starting the course by looking at the course prerequisites, frameworks and tooling we're going to use. I'll introduce the demo application next, and we will learn about different strategies to work with DTO model classes. Lastly, we will learn how we can tackle integration with HTTP client by having a look at its internals. If you happen to have any questions, the best place to post them is on the discussion tab on the course page. I try to check this from time to time, and like that, the questions and answers can help other people out as well. For very short questions that require a quick answer, you can contact me on Twitter. Or just follow me if you want to know about upcoming courses, user group events, or are interested in the technology I'm interested in. I mainly tweet regarding ASP.NET Core, security and APIs. Let's have a look at the course prerequisites. There aren't many prerequisites for this course. You don't need to know anything about integrating with an API. That is fully covered. Good knowledge of C#, however, is required. It'll also help if you've built a .NET application before, because some common concepts like its built-in dependency injection system will be used. That being said, it is not a hard set requirement per se. Let's have a look at the frameworks and tooling next. As far as tooling is concerned, I will use Visual Studio 2022. If you haven't got a license for that, you can download the free Community Edition. That doesn't mean you need to use Visual Studio 2022. ASP.NET Core can be developed using other IDEs as well, like Visual Studio Code, which also runs on Mac and Linux. Feel free to use the IDE you feel most comfortable with. As mentioned, I'm using Visual Studio. If you want to use that as well, and you haven't installed it yet, the first thing to do is install it. It could be that you or the company you work for has a license for using Visual Studio. In that case, you can use that license to install the Professional or Enterprise Edition, depending on the type of your license. If you don't have a license, you can either download a trial version or download the Community Edition. Important to remember is that during installation, you should make sure that the ASP.NET and web development workload is checked. That will ensure that all the necessary components for web development are installed, which is necessary for the demo scenario. If you already have Visual Studio or another IDE installed, but you don't have .NET 8 support yet, you can download it at the URL on screen. Simply download and install the full .NET 8 SDK and you're good to go. I figured that the best way to focus on HTTP client and related stuff is to keep the rest of the required framework-specific knowledge as low as possible. So what we're going to do is integrate with an API from a console application. You can use what you will learn here in any other .NET type application, from a web app to a .NET MAUI app. You can find the starter solution and the finished solutions for each module via the exercises tab on the course page, but it's probably easier to simply clone the starter and finished solution from my GitHub. Let's have a look at that demo application. In this demo, we'll introduce the demo app we'll be working with. The solution consists of two projects. Movies.client is the project in which we will add our code during the course. And Movies.api is an API that exposes movies. It was built in ASP.NET Core according to the best practices I've used in my other courses on building APIs with ASP.NET Core. But how the API was built isn't important to us. I happened to have created an API with ASP.NET Core, as that is what I'm most comfortable with. But as far as this course is concerned, the API might as well have been built in Java, Node.js, or any other technology or framework. We will only very rarely have to change something at this level. To ensure the API runs on as many platforms as possible, I chose to use SQLite as database. For demo purposes, the database is recreated every time the application starts. So feel free to change, update and delete rows or tables. If you happen to make a mistake, it's not a big issue. Simply restart the API and you're good to go. Let's build and run this. Our API is up and running at port 5001. Let's open a browser and navigate to it. And the endpoint I want to navigate to is the root/Swagger. This opens the Swagger UI. We can see the supported resources and methods. And if we scroll down a bit, we can also see the exposed models. We're going to work with movies. And movies have posters and trailers. But in order to keep the downloading of the exercise files under control, we don't use real trailers or posters. These are just bytes generated on the fly, but that is sufficient for our purposes. For one thing, it will allow us to create pretty big streams of data, and that will allow us to look into how we can optimize for that scenario. As an example, let's send a GET request to get the movies. So I click try it out. I want to get back JSON. And I click execute. And here we go, a list of movies. In case you're wondering about the movies used as dummy data, I was born in 1981, so I grew up during the 90s. These are a few of my favorite movies from that time period. So if you want to take a break from programming, check them out. One more thing regarding the API. It supports true async streaming via the API/movies stream endpoint. What you see here are the movies streaming asynchronously from the database in real time, one by one, to whomever is consuming this API. It takes a little bit of extra work to integrate with something like this, but it is worth it, and we will cover it during the course. Back to the codebase. Let's have a look at our client application. This is a .NET console application. I included the Microsoft.extensions.hosting package, which enables this console application to integrate with the default dependency injection system and more. The implementation is very basic, but we don't need more than that. In the program class, I set up the container, and I added a console and a debug output logger. The integration service is what we will be working with. When the application starts, we call run async on it, and it's in that method that we can write our code to integrate with the API. For example, if I open the CRUD samples class, which is one of the implementations of the integration service, you will find a currently not implemented run async method. It's in this method that we will write our code to integrate with the API. And to do that, we need to be able to make HTTP requests and capture the responses. For that, we will use the little gem called HTTP client. You will notice that there's more than one class that implements integration service. In fact, all of these classes here are services that implement it. That's because I separated this out a bit, resulting in one implementation with the samples for each module. So each of these classes relates to the demos of one module. This avoids having to have one class with a huge amount of demos. And like this, it's way easier to find the code you're looking for. One thing is missing though. We don't have client-side DTO classes yet. Let's see what our options are.